Former Eskom executive Matshela Koko and 7 others are expected to appear in court in Middelburg this afternoon on charges of fraud, corruption and money laundering. The 8 were arrested in Gauteng and Mpumalanga this morning. The NPA says they have been implicated in the awarding of irregular contracts given in the building of the Kusile Power Station valued at more than 2 billion rand.
The NPA investigating directorate can confirm that there have been several arrests. About 8 people were arrested at the crack of dawn today. They were ferried from Gauteng coming here. 1 person has been arrested from Middelburg here in Mpumalanga, and they're expected to appear, just like you said, at around 1 o'clock this afternoon. We cannot get into the details as to who the people are. Safe to say that 1 is a former senior executive, actually 2 are senior executives from Eskom, Kusile in particular, and then others are private persons that you'll see being brought to court today. But what we can also confirm is that the arrest was by the NPA investigating directorate, assisted by secondees of the Hawk Station, that's the ID, as well as the investigation was part and parcel, assisted also by SIU. The accused are going to be facing charges of corruption, fraud, as well as money laundering, pertaining to a 2.2 billion contract that we are alleging was irregularly received, plus various other buttering systems that took place, which we deem were corruption in truth and in fact.
Let's talk more about those arrests then. We can speak now to journalist and editor Ferial Haffajee, who's joining us this afternoon. Ferial, a very good afternoon to you. So these arrests, am I right to say, would be made even more significant by the fact that Matshela Koko, who's among the people who we are expecting to see in the dock today, has in fact said that he's done nothing wrong and was among the saviors at Eskom?
Hi, Tembekile. I think once we see the people appearing, a lot more will be made clear to us, including why we have stage 4 load shedding today, because this is one of those power stations, the new ones, Kusile, which was meant to ensure that this didn't happen to us. I think that the company ABB, the Swedish multinational, at the center of the story here. If you look back in July 2022, 2 of the executives and their wives were arrested by the investigating directorate in July. So we can see the long tail of this, and I think this case is going to become as important as the Transnet court, which Andrea Johnson and her team also have done. So these, for me, are the 2 biggest state capture cases on at the moment.
And as we reflect on this moment, Ferial, quite significant that
yes,
both Matshela Koko and Brian Molefe, Brian Molefe was arrested to do with affairs at Transnet. But when you look at their arrests, right, and the broader implications, you've got this that's going to play out in the criminal justice system, but it's also an issue that's going to have very much political fallout, is it not?
I do think it will. I think it's important that Eskom has been doing these investigations, turned over this massive docket of information that implicates multinationals. So we saw that Brian Molefe was also charged, and now we're going to see other senior Eskom executives in court this afternoon. Obviously, this is having major implications for the ANC's elective conference come December, because people are located in structures of the ANC. I'm not sure about Mr. Koko, but certainly Brian Molefe has significant political support, so this will have implications. As a South African, I'm also highly concerned that ABB being yet another multinational, which is proven to be the key players in the story of state capture. McKinsey, Bain, now ABB, China Rail, AAR, Swissport. The list is getting very long indeed. If you look at that July case and what News 24 has been written today, ABB paid massive amounts in bribery in subcontracts in order to win this 2.2 billion rand value. In fact, Sunday Times reported a few years ago that Eskom executives had promised them 8 billion rand in future contracts. So we can see where this was headed if it hadn't been disrupted by civil society.
It takes us back then to the conversation and the briefing by the President on Sunday around the implementation of what was said in the state capture report, and how the private sector, both domestically and globally, is so central to the destruction that we've seen in the last few years of this country's SOEs and government departments.
Absolutely, so central. And ABB, like McKinsey, like Bain, paid back the money. I think they paid back 1.4 billion of the current amount that we're going to be speaking about a lot today. And I think they think that absolves them. But the fact that we're still sitting with stage 4 load shedding, that contract had to be passed on to other companies, costs involved in that, legal fees. We pay that. You see it in Eskom's massive debt, and government, which really means taxpayers or the people of South Africa, take on that debt. We're going to be taking on about 200 billion rand of Eskom's debt, if we listen carefully to what the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, said yesterday. So I do think the multinationals, the executives who didn't live up to their stewardship, they have a lot to answer for. And it's important, I feel, that today's court case is quite a key one, Tembekile.
Do you think then, Ferial, that these prosecutions and what was said by the President this week, as far as going after those who were implicated in state capture, will do enough to shock or frighten enough the people, not just in government, but also executives at companies such as this German multinational, the likes of McKinsey, enough for them to not even look in South Africa's direction when it comes to corruption?
I hope so. I was looking at ABB's South Africa website now to see, are they going to respond at all? Same thing with Bain, and all I've ever seen, Tembekile, is massive denials, blaming it on executives who've now left. Two of the ABB executives are in court, were in court charged in July. And I think what you see these massive companies doing is try to blame it on local people who did bad, like the McKinsey, Vikas Swarup. He was the country manager at the time, and try and then say, oh, we cooperated with the investigators and we've paid back the money. I think we as South Africans have to ask ourselves, is that sufficient?
On the issue of whether that is sufficient, as far as recourse is concerned and accountability, should South Africa standardize, do you think, Ferial, what we saw with Bain and Co., where they're basically banned from doing business with the state, or in this case, perhaps even ban them for the duration of the trial, and say, hey, perhaps here's a 10-year ban on government contracts, even post the sentencing of individuals if convicted for alleged corruption?
No, that's the view of the excellent work of people at Open Secrets like Henny van Vuren and them. They have said, along with Lord Peter Hain, that these companies should be banned. Very interesting thing happening in our country. What you've got is Bain hiring very, very expensive lawyers to try and rescind that ban. And as far as I can see, also hiring Mr. Tony Leon's Resolve Communications to do the reputation management and political smoothing work around this. I do think if you look at all of the state capture reports, as I've been doing for some months now, the numbers of multinationals who are implicated as the key players, the key bribers, are much more than I think has entered our public square, has entered our public consciousness. And later on today, I hope we're not going to just focus on the one big engineer we all know so well, but not forget that the people who were doing the paying was in fact a very powerful multinational company.
Ferial Haffajee, good point to leave it. Thank you so much for your time today.